I hear that you just finished doing Isha Upanishad. Huh? So there should be a lively conversation. And I'm going to focus only on the first verse and only on the first half of the first verse. There's a very famous Sanskrit verse that refers to another half verse. The shloka dhena prakshami yaduktam garantakoti bhi brahma satyam jagad mithya jivo brahma vinaparaha. The very famous verse that some people attribute to Shankaracharya. Nobody knows exactly who said it first, but it says, I will explain to you in half a verse the essence of the teachings of thousands and thousands of scriptures. And Brahman alone is real. The world is transitory. The Jiva and Brahman are one. Now, I mention it because as Isha Upanishad, the whole thing is important. There's a middle section that's very confusing. But to me, the first verse and the first half of the first verse is the most important part of the entire Isha Upanishad. So we'll focus on that today and tomorrow, in these two sessions. And it's a little bit, I won't say controversial, but it's explained in different ways. I'll go through that very briefly. Let me just read it first. Isha vasyam idam sarvam yad kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita ma guridha kasyaswid dhanam. We won't bother with the second half. We'll just do this first half. Okay. So Isha vasyam idam sarvam. This term vasyam, see, this verse is explained in two completely different ways. I don't know how you did it when what translation you used. Okay. Okay. That it either means all this is to be covered by God, or all this is covered by God, or it's filled with God. Now, the interpretation given by Shankaracharya and Swamiji will be everything is to be covered with God, which is really closer, grammatically closer to the language that we have. Vasyam this will be a gerundive is to be done, but Swami Lokeshwaranandaji and Swami Sarvagatanandaji, two of the Swamis that I have the greatest respect for and love very much and knew very, very well, give that other interpretation. And they're both true, but the first one gives us something very practical. It gives us, this is some directive, what is to be done. So we get some very practical advice, how to see that everything is filled with God. Everything is filled with God, but it's up to us to do it. So we have this very interesting dynamic that there's a reality to something, and then there's our perception of it, and our perception is at odds with the reality, and how do we go about changing that? So we have this very interesting dynamic, we can say, that everything is divine, and we're told to cover everything with a layer of divinity because it's already covered with some layer of Maya. So it's an odd concept. If we think about it, it's like saying if somebody shows up with a mask and you want to find out, you know who it is underneath the mask, and you want to find out how we can see that person. So it's saying, we'll take another mask that looks like that person and put it on top of that mask. Now we say, why not just pull off that mask? That makes sense, but we'll find that there are problems with that. That this is actually a brilliant type of solution. So anyhow, this is what we'll go through. I don't mind questions in the middle. Also, if anybody comes up with anything that they want to add to all of this. That everything is filled with God. Yeah. It's again, grammatically, it's not quite not as literal. But some people don't like this idea that if you say everything is to be covered with God, that means that God is not present within everything. But it's that we don't want to take it in that sense. We want to take it in the sense that for us, we see everything as just matter. How do we see everything as Brahman? We have to put a layer. We have to use our imagination and our intelligence and everything to superimpose an idea over a false idea so that we can realize the true idea. It sounds odd, but we'll see it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and we'll find that this is exactly the teaching we get with Sri Krishna also and Swamiji and everything. So this is really what we're trying to do is not change anything but our own understanding. We're trying to find some way to see the divinity already present within all beings, within all living beings, within all inanimate objects, even. This the language that we have, this idam sarvam, this means everything. We find this, it's kind of a code word. It's just either the sarvam idam or idam sarvam. We'll find it both ways. It means this entire visible universe, all living beings, all inanimate beings, everything. It's all inclusive. Yeah, all inclusive. So this Ishavasam idam sarvam, this everything, this whole universe, this whole visible universe, whatever exists, yat kincha, jagatyam jagat, whatever exists in this changing universe. We have two words that are jagat and jagati or jagat. There's two words that mean the same thing. Jagat means changing. This universe means that which is constantly changing. It's like samsara. That even in the very language that's used for this universe, it means transitory. It means something that's in a constant state of flux. So we have to superimpose on that this idea of, and the term that's used, this Isha, Ish. It's like Ishvara. We can say just the divine. So we have to somehow infuse the idea of the divine, because that's the truth. The truth is that everything is divine in nature. Now, when we say divine, this is also a term that could be interpreted in so many different ways. So what we take that to mean is that it all can be traced back to that ultimate reality, which is non-material. To this, what we call it Brahman or pure consciousness. Those who are devotional in nature will say God, the creator, or something like that. Those who are not devotional in nature will say that there's an ultimate reality, impersonal, absolute Brahman. We'll see that the concept in Brahman in the Upanishads is a very all-inclusive concept, a very vast concept that includes even prana, even life. That the very strict way of understanding Brahman is that it has to be this pure consciousness. Anything, even like prana, has to belong to nature. But the Upanishads, they're not so strict in their definition. Brahman can even sit and think things. May I be many. Brahman can get bored. Brahman can look around and see there's nobody here. What am I supposed to do? So then Brahman thinks, Bahusyam, let me become many, and then the creation comes and everything. So it's allegorical and poetical, the Upanishads. We don't have to limit it to any very strict interpretation the way the philosophers do. They'll want to have their very strict definitions of Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman. The Upanishads don't make any big distinction. That
So Ishvara and Brahman is that's when the Ishvara is, Brahman is Maya.
yes. If we want to strictly make a distinction between Brahman and Ishvara, then we'll have to say that Brahman is Nirguna Brahman and Ishvara is Saguna Brahman. So, yeah, now, what I'm saying is here, with the Upanishad is not going to make a big distinction like that. So, for some, say for Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes he saw everything as the embodiment of pure consciousness, Chinmaya. Other times he said, I see that everything is a manifestation of the Lord. Sometimes he would say, I see Divine Mother everywhere. So he could see it from a personal point of view, from impersonal absolute point of view, all different ways of. So when we say covered with the divine, it gives us options. If we're very devotional, we see the hand of God in everything. If we're not so much devotional, more philosophical, we see that everything is this play of Maya superimposed on this absolute reality of Brahman. So we have lots of different ways of understanding how we give up this idea that everything is dead dull material or a combination of matter, and how to see some deeper reality within everything. So this is what we're trying to do with this particular verse. Yeah.
So, Upanishads that contain without form. At least the initial, and then it might have been-
Yeah, this is a very good question, because we have this idea that the Vedas in general, the Vedas were inspired. This is why it's called Shruti. But what does it mean for this idea of inspiration? Generally, with regard to the hymns, Vedic hymns, that these ancient rishis were inspired. They heard these things, and they didn't sit down to compose them. That somehow they were instruments. These hymns came through them, something like that. The Upanishads are different. The infallibility of the Upanishads, why it's considered the ultimate authority, is because these were God-realized souls that either wrote them or described within them. Say the teachings of Janaka and Yajnavalkya and all of the great figures of the Upanishads, we take to be God-realized souls who are speaking out of direct experience. That's the authority of the Upanishads. The Shruti aspect of the Samhita, of the hymns, is different. That is taken to be in every cycle, they'll come out exactly the same. That it was some real like automatic writing. They didn't write it down, of course. But the Upanishads, some of them are stories, which we don't take literally. We don't really think that we have the exact words that Yama gave to Nachiketa in the Kathopanishad. So it's not revealed literature in the same sense, but it has the ultimate authority. Yeah. So because they were composed, it's not like maybe the people who composed them were inspired to do it. Maybe they actually got to hear dialogues between Janaka and Yajnavalkya. We don't know these things, but the teachings that we find within them, we take to have the ultimate authority above Gita and anything else. Yeah, everything else, Smriti is kind of secondary. So this Isha Upanishad, there's no dialogue, there's no story, there's nothing. This is just who is the one who is saying all of this? The author of the Upanishad, which we can also, if we want to say that this is just that unknown divine narrator. Who is it? We don't know. Some of the Upanishads have authors. Kathopanishad, there was supposed to be some sage. Some of the Kataka Upanishad, sometimes they say the Kathopanishad. Many of the Upanishads, they're just known by the first few words. Ishavasya Upanishad, the Sakena Upanishad, it starts out with like that. So it's not so much the author or the speakers within, but the truth. The truth has the highest authority because These are the utterances of God-realized souls. This is the belief. So when we are the Tattvamasi, mostly the Mahavakyas. The Mahavakyas are the ultimate authority. These few statements about the real nature of the self, the real nature of Brahman, the real nature of the universe. These are considered to be the most authoritative portions that we have. So we have this idea that this Jagat means that which is constantly changing, that which is ephemeral. We know that there are many different interpretations in Vedanta about the status of this universe. And we get into great confusion. I mentioned this verse attributed to Shankaracharya, that this universe is mithya. And now, what does mithya mean? Yeah, we generally will say unreal, but what does unreal mean? There are technical meanings. One of the technical meanings, falsehood, anything that's changeable, automatically is eliminated from the realm of the real. Yeah, but some will take it literally, that it's like a dream. Some will take it to mean that just constantly changing, ephemeral. Some will even take it to mean there's a projection of my own mind. There are all different interpretations about this world. And the truth is that we can't say anything. We only know what we experience personally through our own minds. We can't say if it's a dream. We can't. We never come into contact with that underlying essence, which we may call matter, which we may call substance, which we may call the Brahman. We never come into contact with that. This will be one of the ideas that we have here. Otherwise, we could just pull the mask off. But what happens when we remove the surface of something? We get another surface. It's not so simple. So this is actually one of the axiomatic principles of Western philosophy, that the thing in itself can never be known. We only know it as it appears to us, as the phenomenal reality of something, as opposed to noumenal reality. Otherwise, it's speculation. Now, there's a big distinction in Vedanta between what is the real nature of this universe? What is the underlying reality of it? This belongs to the field of philosophy. What is the underlying reality to us as individuals? That I want to peel away these outer coverings of the mind, the body, sense, all of that. That is directly experienceable. There's no speculation about that. What is the nature of my own self? Because I am that. What is the nature of this external world? Guesswork. There'll be all different theories. For Sri Ramakrishna, it's not terribly important, but he has his own way of looking at things. He accepts all of these ideas. But the great mystics, when their mind goes up to a higher level, they see a different universe. They see things differently from us. And Sri Ramakrishna always talks about coming down from that highest state. If we have that ultimate realization, that nirvikalpa samati, that when we come down, then we have a different view of this world. We see everything as a manifestation of divinity. Now, he also says that there'll be some, say Shankaracharya, that when he comes down from that state, then he'll see everything through the eyes of the jnani, that the universe is kind of unsubstantial. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, there's different terminology that can be used. Okay, this is satya and mithya, that real and unreal, and then we have sat and asat. They're kind of similar. Now, Sri Ramakrishna uses generally There's nitya and anitya. What is permanent and what is changing? And everything is changing. The only thing that's not changing is myself, the witness. That's the only thing. And that witness self is one with Brahman, which will be this transcendent reality. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he uses this term anitya. The other distinction he makes is vastu and avastu. Now, this also has two different meanings. That philosophically, it means substance and that which is non-substance. So that means this avastu can be something that we can say something like unreal. But the other way is that it's unsubstantial in the kind of an emotional sense. That the universe is hollow, there's nothing to hold on to, it can't satisfy us. That's the sense in which Ramakrishna usually uses it. And that's the sense that it's important to us. We may say that this universe is 100% real, that it's 100%, we can break it down into atoms and molecules, and it has an existence that no one can question. We can say all of that, and at the same time say that there's something hollow about it. There's something unsubstantial. It can't satisfy us, and it's constantly changing and fleeting and nothing to hold on to. We don't have to be big philosophers to develop some detachment to the world. We can very easily see that what we're longing for, this desire we have for some type of fulfillment, contentment in life, that can't be taken care of by any external thing. It has to come from within. We can all understand that. So Sri Ramakrishna doesn't go too much into all the big metaphysics of what is the nature of the world. He says, I don't like to call it like a dream. I like to see this as manifestation of the Divine Mother, manifestation of Brahman, something like that. But he doesn't make a very big point about it. But he emphasizes this idea that everything is changing. Everything is we can't hold on to it. Everything is being swept away in this river of time. Day after day, life is going. Huh? You know, this is Bhajo Avindam, that one beautiful line. Kala priyadati gachati ayu. Time is just playing its game, and our life is going like that. So we can all see that if we look at this world in terms of time. Don't worry about the same chair that was here yesterday is here today. But where is yesterday? Where is a whole lifetime? It just gets swallowed up by time. So this is that anitya idea. And what is the real meaning of anitya? Suppose, just theoretically, suppose that everything remained exactly the same. That this chair that we see, this will be here forever. But I won't be here. I am the one who's anitya. I'm the one who day after day, this life is going by and everything, and I'll be going, one day it'll be the last day, that's all. Yeah. So this is that distinction that Sri Ramakrishna makes. So this idea, this jagat, this jagatyam, so this world, this jagat means everything which is moving. Whatever there is, it's moving in this universe. All that is to be covered with God. So now, how do I take all of this ephemeral, all of this which has no substance to it, which is empty and everything? How do I give it meaning? I infuse it with some idea of divinity. So this is that idea that Ishavasam idam sarvam yad kincha, anything jagatyam jagat. See, almost every religious tradition, I won't say all of them, almost all of them have some concept that their scriptures are revealed, or the word of God, something like that. Now, the Vedantic tradition is a non-historical tradition. And the ultimate truth of these things has to do with principles, which are universal principles. Now, if we want to take a very literal interpretation of the Bible, then it really requires a little bit of a sectarian view. That the beginning of creation, it had to have taken place in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve and all of in the Vedantic tradition or Hindu tradition, Puranic tradition. We have all different creation stories. We don't take them literally. We can. I mean, there may be people who will do it, but it's not necessary. It's the truth that is embodied. And now, if we try to distill the teachings of Christianity into some essential element, and we decide, well, let's go with the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes and everything, blessed are the pure in heart, that whole thing, then we can say these were divinely inspired words of Christ, and they have some special authority. Yeah. But if we want to go by each and every historical fact that we have in the Bible, then we have to throw science out the window and all sorts of other things. Yeah, creation theories and all of that. Vedanta has no problem with modern science and their understanding of Big Bang theories and all of that. There's no contradiction. Swamiji was very much in favor of bringing science and religion together. Or Swami Ranganathanandaji, he was very well known for pushing this idea that Vedanta will never be in conflict with the findings of modern day science, that everything can be harmonized. So those religious traditions that insist on the sacred nature of their texts, which are historical in nature, that it started out with some parampara and this person and that begat that person and that person, everything, they'll always be in conflict with other religious traditions. That which one is true? Now, Vedanta, the beauty of Vedanta is that it accepts the value of all of these traditions without putting any special emphasis on the historicity of them. We can appreciate the mythology. Mythology sometimes is taken to mean something is false. And Swamiji's point of view, at least, was that mythology is a way of embodying the highest truths within stories that don't have to be taken literally. So he said every religion has three aspects to it. One is mythology, one is ritual, and one is philosophy. And so this mythology is but most religions will not look upon their own tradition as mythology. Somebody gave a very interesting definition of mythology. The mythology means somebody else's religion. Yeah. I remember I spoke in Providence one time, and I was talking about this Vedic mythology, because the Vedas have their own mythology. They have their own set of gods. I mean, if we want to accept that, then we have Indra, Varuna, Vayu, all of that, a whole different set of gods than we have today. Now we have Vishnu and Shiva and Brahman and Durga and all of that. Now, so what happened? The others, they retired and this new set came, something like that. Huh? So we don't have to take all of these things, so literally. They all have some beautiful symbolic meaning to them. Actually, in the Vedic tradition, all the gods and goddesses were personified powers of nature. They were all nature gods, and goddesses, which we find in all of the old Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Nordic mythology. It was always like that. These ancient people, they saw divinity everywhere. How does the sun shines through the grace of the sun god? Aditya. The rain comes through the grace of Pajanya, the god of rain. They deified everything. So I was speaking about the Vedic mythology, and one man got very angry. He said, "Why do you call it mythology? Will you call this a Bible mythology?" I said, "Yeah, I call it mythology. It's not a dirty word, mythology." Our Joseph Campbell, that he raised the study of mythology. There were others also. What was her name? Edith. It's somebody wrote a lot of books about mythology, about the very important truths that are embodied in mythology. So anyhow, a very long answer to your question about, yes, most religions do feel that there's something, either it's revealed or something was inspired. The word of Muhammad, that he was inspired when he wrote these things and everything. Yeah. And it's good. We should feel that there's something sacred about our own tradition. But not to feel that ours alone is revealed and everything else is just kind of misguided. Yeah. So we start out with this idea that this world is ephemeral, it's changing, our relationships, nothing to hold on to and everything, to get a little dispassion about things. But if we just stop with that, this is what Sri Ramakrishna says, that we do this in 1880, we discard everything. Yeah, we discard everything, that all these things are changing. They're not that ultimate reality, so we give them up. He says this is just the beginning stage. Afterwards, then we bring everything back. Then we accept everything. We see everything in a new light. We see everything as divine or a manifestation of divinity. Now, the terminology that we have is a little bit interesting. In the Upanishads, we're used to this term Brahman is more common. Brahman, as I was saying, generally will mean this impersonal absolute reality, which we understand to be consciousness itself. But it has a certain power within it. It's not simply just this pure consciousness. Very often we're given the illustration of the sun. The sun, what is the main characteristic of the sun? Light, okay? And does light have any color to it? Light is invisible. Yeah? Now, if we say that the sun, will limit the sun to being the source of invisible light. Now, what have we done? We've missed out on a whole lot of stuff. Okay, the sun is the source of warmth. Sun is the source of life. This for plant life and everything, and the rays can get converted into food for plants and everything else. And this invisible light of the sun, does it contain within it any color? All of the colors of the rainbow. When it goes through a prism on the other side, it comes out all of the colors. How can it come out all of the colors on the other side unless it contains it in a hidden form on the one side? So now we're in this realm of Saguna Brahman. So that same sun, which is just pure light, pure illumination, has these secondary qualities. So that means that this Brahman, which is the pure consciousness, is also the ground and source of this whole creation. When it goes through the prism of Maya, then it comes out in all different forms on the other side. So this is that one idea. So now we're kind of in this realm of Ishvara. This Isha, it comes from some funny root, eat. Shankaracharya explains that it's not a very, otherwise it'll be Ishvarena or something. So this term, we have to understand the different terms that are used, because all of the different terms that are used give us a different understanding of the nature of the divine. One of the problems with translation work and problems with Western theology is that we tend to use the word God for everything. God. We use that word for everything. Swamiji writes in one place that, yeah, it's not such a bad word, don't throw it out, but it doesn't have all of the subtle distinctions. In Vedanta, we have all of these different terms and different concepts. We have our Brahman, we have our Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, Ishvara. Yeah. No, that's English. I'm talking about technical Sanskrit terms. Yeah. Even things, funny things like Hiranyagarbha. and there's Virat, and all sorts of different things. There's Atman, Paramatman, all different terms, all seeing that same reality from a different standpoint and in a different context. So what I wanted to do was have a little bit of a discussion about these different concepts of God, we can say, that we find in Vedanta. There's a very nice verse from the Bhagavata Purana that says, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam. So there's tattvavids, these knowers of truth, that there's a certain knowledge which is advayam. There's a certain non-dual consciousness or knowledge, that truth which they see as this highest, infinite, absolute truth, which the knowers of truth understand to be real knowledge. Brahma iti, Paramatma iti, Bhagavan iti, Shabdyate. They call it by 3 different names. This is Brahman. See, generally, people argue. These are all different things. Brahman is here, Paramatma is here, but there's this ultimate reality is called like 3 different terms. There's Brahman, Paramatman, the higher self, and Bhagavan, personal God. So this is one way of saying that there's only one ultimate reality. There's only one sun, but it has a hidden power and it can manifest in all different ways. We get a very wrong conception if we think that there's a Nirguna Brahman here and a Saguna Brahman here. We have the creator God here, we have the transcendent reality there. There's only one reality. But it's seen from different points of view. It manifests in different ways, different functions. There are all different reasons why we use different terms for all of these things. So we have this idea of Nirguna Brahman. Okay, so this consciousness which has no attributes to it, which is perfectly empty. And this is also the pure self within. The Buddhist tradition and the Vedanta tradition are constantly arguing with each other over this very foolish thing that is the ultimate reality. Is it Purna? Is it full? Or is it Shunya? Is it empty? Now, Vedantic position is that is empty in the sense that it's devoid of anything external to it. But it's not a non-existent. So Shunya and Abhava, these are 2 different things. Abhava means it simply doesn't exist at all. Shunya means it's empty. So think of the difference between, say somebody does a painting. They do a painting on the canvas. And then they want to do another painting. They have to have a canvas that's completely blank. Completely blank. This will be Shunya. Now, if somebody says Abhava, that'll mean there's no canvas at all. They can't do any painting whatsoever. So the concept of Brahman is not that it's a non-existent, but Shunya in the sense that, say, within our own everything that we're conscious of is external to consciousness. If you have a mirror, everything you see inside the mirror is outside of the mirror. It doesn't belong to the mirror. If there's an image in front of the mirror and you remove that image, then the mirror remains what it was before. This is that concept of the Brahman or the Atman or the self. So this is that Nirguna Brahman, but this Saguna Brahman, that same Brahman, has some power, Chit Shakti, some power to project the universe and to uphold the universe and to withdraw it back. Like the spider spinning its web and living in the web and then withdrawing it. And when this universe is projected, then where does Brahman dwell? Within each and every living being. It's a very interesting idea. At the same time, it remains unchanged behind. So that same light, the sun doesn't undergo any change whatsoever when the sunlight goes through the prism, and everything is there on the other side. That's also seen by the light of the sun. But the sun remains the sun, unchanged, but one and the same reality. Then when we get to personal God, Bhagavan, this is a little bit outside the realm of Vedanta, to be perfectly honest, outside the realm of the Upanishads. We get a little hint of this idea, but really it gets developed later in the Gita and Puranas and everything. This idea of personal God. How do we explain this idea of the personal God? Personal God means that we again put our own covering on top. That Sri Ramakrishna gives so many different illustrations. That water is infinite, absolute. It's formless, but our power of devotion will make it form into a certain block of ice. It'll have a certain shape and everything. There'll be a subjective element to it, but the substance is real. The substance is water. So this Bhagavan, it'll necessarily be a little subjective. Otherwise, when I say God is mother and you say God is father, then we have a big fight. It has to be that reality which can be seen as either mother or father. So there's a little bit of this subjective element to it. We can understand this relationship between all of these a little bit if we use the analogy of a dream. Now, this dream analogy, sometimes we get in trouble. We say, oh, this world is like a dream, then it's really unreal. So don't take it in that sense. But if we think that Brahman is like somebody who's sleeping. When we're sleeping, we're not aware of anything, but consciousness is there. And this sleeper, consciousness is there. Now, when we dream, then the sleeper becomes a dreamer. The sleeper becomes a dreamer. It's not a second person. Huh? The sleeper becomes a dreamer, but remains a sleeper. The sleeper, that has to be there all of the time. That's Nirguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman doesn't have to be that when it's not actively involved in creation or anything, then it just remains as it always was. So the sleeper is always there. Then when the dream comes, the sleeper becomes a dreamer. Then this universe is created, projected out of the mind of, is it out of the mind of the sleeper or of the dreamer? They're one and the same. They're not two different things. Huh? Yeah. But we'll say the dreamer, because of the sleeper, he's content just to sleep. What makes a sleeper dream? If we're sleeping and there's no awareness of anything, why do we have a dream? Huh? We have in physics or whatever, it would be physics, we say an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by some outside force, right? What is this? Not physics. What is it? Physics. Yeah. At rest? Yeah. Yeah. Or if something is in motion or remain in motion, that's some outside force. We'll stop it like that. So if Brahman is just pure consciousness and there's nothing within it to say or for it to think, now let me have a dream. I mean, we have that idea in the Upanishad, but think it this way. Then what will cause it to have a dream? There has to be something, and we don't know what it is, and we don't know why it is, and we don't know how it works. So what do we call it? Maya. Maya is that by virtue of which that which shouldn't happen happens. By virtue of which the impossible becomes possible, by virtue of which the one becomes the many. Why we can't say, how we can't say. So we give a term to something which we don't understand. That's all we're doing. Yeah. So that's Maya. So the first thing we understand is that the dreamer and the sleeper are one and the same person. When I wake up, I say, I had a dream. That I dreamt this, but I was also the one observing it. Now, who is this fellow in the dream? This actor in the dream. And what is the nature of this, of the dream world? Dream world is a projection out of the mind of the dreamer. And what about the person within the dream? The actor.
He's active or inactive?
He's acting. He's acting.
Okay.
Yeah. Shall
Yeah. Many times other people have asked in your in Vedanta, like we always talk about dream and in sleep. What about in coma or in anesthesia?
This is a different question.
Right. So
I'll come to that. This is a different question. But my question is, who is this actor in the dream? The dreamer and the sleeper. Is it a projection out of the mind of the dreamer? No, it is the dreamer. When I wake up, I'll say the dream, it wasn't real, it was just a projection, but I had that experience. That was me. I dreamt that I did this. Same I. I didn't dream that somebody else did it. I dreamt that I did it. Exactly the same I. 100% identical. Right? Only I gave up that dream body and now I have this other body. But it's the same I. So this is the difference. Sometimes people say that everything is a manifestation of Brahman, all living beings, all physical objects. True, but in a very different sense. In a very different sense, because when the whole dream breaks, the actor doesn't disappear along with everybody else. Actor goes back to being the dreamer and now awake. So we have this perfect identity between the sleeper, the dreamer, and the actor in the dream. So between Brahman, Ishvara, and Jivatman, and the individual. This is that Vedantic point of view that is absolute identity. It's not a part, it's not a projection, it's nothing else. I am that. I am that. Now, the other schools have different ways of understanding that relationship. But this idea, so then we can say that this is Jivatman and Paramatman, the Supreme Self and the individual self, one and the same. Others will say that we're all parts of this reality, like all the waves on the ocean. So one wave is separate from another wave, but they're all, in essence, water, the same thing. When they subside, then they're all one with the ocean, something like that. This would be a different point of view and different, they'll argue against each other. But for Sri Ramakrishna, each one of these is a perfectly legitimate way of looking at reality. Why not? Why get stuck with one thing? We have to look at it this way. Sri Ramakrishna, one of the most important statements that he ever made consisted of two words. We all know this is the Dotoma Totopot. But then other times he would say Mot, Pot. Mot, Pot. That means that every philosophical system, every religious tradition, every teaching, every whatever darshana, whatever philosophy that we have, is simply a path to the truth. It's not the truth. It's simply a path. So he would say, yeah, mot pot. So we mot isho noi. Don't confuse the path with the ultimate reality, the goal. It's just a means of getting there. So we can look upon each individual soul as a spark that comes out of the fire. All of us separate individuals. Each of the drops of water will all merge in the ocean. Or we can have this idea that it's just the one sun that's reflected in all different containers. That we break them down, we find that we're one with that sun. There are all different ways of looking at it. But this idea of Bhagavan is a little bit different. This idea of Bhagavan is that God of love, and that God who we pray to and answers our prayers. We have a philosophical idea, of course, that God dwells within the heart is the higher self. And from that point of view, if I feel separate from that, the stick of ego is lying there, I feel separate from that, then I can feel that whatever I think, whatever prayer I make is being heard by the indwelling presence of the Lord. Now, the Jnani will say you're praying to your own higher self. But his own higher self is not some mental thing. The own higher self is that ultimate reality. So they're both right. They're both right. We can look at it either way. Yeah, Peter.
So something bad happens to me, small.
Mhm.
Goes bad. So one way I comfort myself is everything's one, there's no object, there can be no action, therefore nothing bad really happened to me.
Mhm.
My brain goes, oh yeah, that's very good. Then my heart goes, it certainly feels like something bad happened. So then I say, well, God has a plan, not your plan, it's God's plan. So, my heart goes, well, God, God has a plan, so must not actually be bad. So my heart says, that's great. And my head says, well, but that doesn't sound right. You had your answer. Oh, yeah, you had your answer. Different answers, but they lead to the same thing. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, this we may get to this a little bit also. This is also covering everything with a belief system, and we have different belief systems, and that we can utilize at different times, and we don't have to believe them literally. This I'm really convinced that most of the belief system that people have is what they want to believe, and that we shouldn't look for any objective truth to these things. Exactly what you say. That suppose whatever happens to me, I say that this was God's will. Mother wanted this to happen. Now somebody says to me, "Do you really believe that literally?" I'll say, don't ask that question. Yeah, don't ask that question. That if I take it that way, then it'll bring tremendous peace of mind, and it'll turn out to be true. This is another thing. This is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I say whatever happens is for my own good, then I'll turn it and make it into something good for me. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So we, at other times, I may say, what can I do? This is my karma. What happened to God's will? What happened to God's will? I'm not in the mood for that God's will. Now I'll say it's my own karma. Now, which one is right? Who can say? We can't say. We don't know. I mean, if we believe in karma, then good. We can say it that way. Others will say everything is the will of my divine mother. Thakur very rarely said this is my karma. Right? For him, everything was the mother's will. Yeah. So these are different spiritual attitudes. A spiritual attitude is also a superimposition. It's also covering everything. So this is one of the ways that we can utilize this idea. So anyhow, to get back to what we were saying, ultimately, that there's a certain oneness in all of these ideas, Brahman, Ishvara, and even Bhagavan. Bhagavan is that same Ishvara with wearing some nice clothes and with a different face and a new name that we give and all of that. And we understand that everyone has the same right to call on God while using their own conception, their own language, their own imagination, even. But the reality is one and the same. Now, let me take an example of Swami Krishna and give it a little twist to it. We all know the illustration of taking water from the pond, and the Christians take water from one place and they use a certain bucket. That the Hindus will take a pitcher, they'll call it jal. The Muslims will take they have this canvas that they use, they'll call it pani and everything. Now, the secondary meaning of this, the first meaning, of course, is that the substance is one and the same. We use different names for it. But the other meaning is that if we want to get that water, then we have to use some container, and that container will have a particular shape to it, and we'll give it a particular name. Now, there's a section in the Gospel of Swami Krishna where somebody asks Swami Krishna, what is the nature of Brahman? And usually he'll say that we can, mukhe bole jaye na, you can't express it in words. But one particular time he hesitates for a second and then he says, it's like water. Now, what are the qualities of water? Is water formless? Oh, now what does that mean? No and yes.
Not form.
Is it ever found in its formless form?
And drowning in that water.
You're formless at that moment. No, this is the truth that Brahman is that water is formless and takes the shape of the container. This is kind of a definition, and it seeks its lowest ground. We know that. So if you take any body of water, the surface will be perfectly flat because of gravity and everything, perfectly flat, and the bottom will take the shape of the bed, river bed or whatever, ocean bed, whatever it is. So water is a very good example of that which can take any particular form without losing its true nature of being formless. Even the water that's in a bucket, the water is formless. That form is temporary, and but the essence of it is that formless state. So if we grab hold of a Bhagavan, we're getting Brahman also. We're getting that water. The form and the shape are very much secondary to the philosopher and very much primary to the devotee. We want that shape, we want that form, we want that name. We have that nice story when Krishna and Rukmini are sitting together in Dwaraka, and they hear that Hanuman is coming to visit. And as Krishna says to Rukmini, you take your form of Sita, I'll take my form of Rama. He doesn't want to see me in any other form. So it's the same reality. Huh? But the name and the form are so important to Hanuman, even though he knew it's one of the things. We have that Srinath, that beautiful verse in the beginning. Yeah. But so I know that they're one and the same, absolute reality, but I love to see my Rama with his lotus eyes and everything. So I want to see that form. So this is that Bhagavan, that idea. Okay, now we go to 1 o'clock. Okay. Now I want to get back. So now we see this is Ishvara. When we say that all this is to be covered by God, by Ishvara, then we see that it has all different layers of meaning. That we can see this consciousness bubbling through everything. We can see the face of the beloved in everything. Can be personal God, can be anything. We're just infusing some level of divinity. We have this idea with the gopis. The whole mind is on Krishna. They see Krishna everywhere. The Yamuna will be the complexion of Krishna. They'll see Tamala tree. They'll see the feathers on the peacock. They're seeing their Krishna. Everything Krishnamaya. They see everything is Krishna. So we have all different ways of understanding it. Okay, now I want to get back to what I said in the beginning. There's a little bit of an odd idea that something is already covered by Maya. So somehow we're not seeing that divinity. So what do? We cover it with another thing. This type of odd idea that we can ask, yeah, why not just tear off that mask and see that ultimate reality? But we find that it's stuck to the face. It's not such a very simple thing that will be tearing off the skin a little bit with it. That if we want to remove paint from something, we can scrape off the paint. There'll be another surface underneath. Huh? If we think that we can get to the ground of something by removing the phenomena outside of it, we just have another phenomenal outside. We'll never really get to the essence, at least with the external things that way. So there's a way of putting a type of paint remover, put a cover of that on top of the paint. That itself will soften that covering of paint, that maya, so then it can easily be removed without disturbing the bottom. Yeah. So ultimately, we are trying to get rid of this layer of maya, but we're adding something on top of it which will help us do it. And it's a painless way of doing it. Rather than scraping anything off, we're putting a covering on something that is also true and will allow us to see things as they really are. So we can kind of put it that way. Swami Vivekananda, he gave several lectures on the Upanishads without actually mentioning the names of them. One was the Isha Upanishad. And this is from this lecture. He gave 2 lectures in London in October of 1896. These are found in Jnana Yoga. And in these lectures, he actually refers to Katha Upanishad, other Upanishads and everything, but there's Isha Upanishad. And this is the lecture entitled God in Everything. And he talks about this whole idea. And as I say, he doesn't mention the name, but we can tell by the different, if we go through it very carefully, we can even see which particular verses that he's referring to. So here, Swamiji puts emphasis on this idea of seeing God in the world as opposed to denying this world. We have 2 different methods. One is this in 1880, right? That if we say this world is somehow hiding this Brahman from us, hiding that reality, then we deny it. We turn our backs on it. And this is that other way of, no, we try to see divinity within it because that's the basis of it. So Swamiji writes or says, the first impression we get of the advice given by religions is that we had better terminate our existence. That means deny all of our enjoyments in the world, our relationships and everything. Just go deep within or go into a forest and then give up everything. To the question how to cure the evils of life, the answer apparently is to give up life. It reminds one of the old story. A mosquito settled on the head of a man, and a friend, wishing to kill the mosquito, gave it such a blow that he killed both man and mosquito. Yeah. So this is that idea that if we just say that human relationships, enjoyments of all of these things are obstacles in spiritual life, and we just reject all of that, and we just try to go deeper. This is a path a few people can take. Those who practice Jnana Yoga, this is for very few who really can go into the forest and do that, who have tremendous dispassion and everything. But for most of us, we lose both God and the world. Yeah, we don't get much of anything from that. So this Upanishad said, don't discard the world in order to see God. That it's like throwing out the baby in the bathwater. You know the origin of that expression. Have you heard that expression? Throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah. This goes back to the old pioneer days when they would have one big tub and there would be enough water for a whole family to bathe in it. So the father would first bathe. He'll be the dirtiest one. It'll get a little muddy. The mother, then the kid. By the time the little baby goes in, the water is so black you can hardly see it. Yeah. Every chance that you'll forget the baby's there and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. So it means that the one essential thing gets thrown out in the midst of us throwing out the other things which we deem to be non-essential. Yeah. For suppose we use this illustration of the snake in the rope. So we see there's a rope lying on the ground. We think it's a snake. And in order to remove it, we go ahead and then we take a knife and we attack it and we cut that snake into little pieces. What do? We've lost a good piece of rope. In addition to get rid of it, we haven't really got. So this is this other idea that we want to learn to see it as what it really is, as the rope. That we're not going to use that other method of just trying to eliminate it and get rid of it and destroy it and everything. In a very positive way. Sometimes they say this best of iti, as opposed to 1880, the positive way of looking at things. So We try to cover everything with the Lord. This is the very practical type of advice that we try to cover it with that which is essential to it. We're not covering it with something that's just a fantasy. And Shankaracharya gives a nice illustration that we have some sandalwood. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you put sandalwood in water, it loses its fragrance. Yes, it does. I did it once unknowingly. I bought some sandalwood mala, and I wanted to wash it in the Ganga. So I took it out. I said, "Oh, it doesn't smell anymore like sandalwood." Yeah. But you use it, and the more you use it, then the fragrance which belongs to it comes out again. So he says, so what we're really doing with this covering everything with God is that we're bringing out the divinity which is hidden within, which is already there, which we've lost because we soaked it in the water of Maya. But it's always there. It's essential to sandalwood that will have that fragrance of the sandalwood. In fact, one of the meanings of this vas is to be fragrant, to be perfume. It's Shankaracharya mentions that. So to make something fragrant. So that's part of the meaning of this, infusing everything with the fragrance of God, sweetening everything with this thought of the divine. This is another quote from Swamiji's lecture, Seeing God in Everything. We have to cover everything with the Lord himself, not by a false sort of optimism, not by blinding our eyes to the evil, but by really seeing God in everything. Thus, we have to give up what we call the world. That means our ordinary conception. And when the world is given up, what remains? God. What is meant? You can have your wife. It does not mean that you are to abandon her, but you are to see God in the wife. Give up your children. What does that mean? To turn them out of doors, as some human brutes do in every country? Certainly not. That is diabolism. It is not religion. But see God in your children. So in everything, in life and in death, in happiness and in misery, the Lord is equally present. The whole world is full of the Lord. See, both ideas are true. That everything is to be covered by God, everything is filled with God. The whole world is full of the Lord. Open your eyes and see him. This is what Vedanta teaches. Swami Sarvadevananji, he's very, very fond of Swamiji's statement that he made. Don't seek God, see God. He has some talks on that. Give up the world which you have conjectured. Yeah, we have our own ideas of what this word really is. Because your conjecture was based upon a very partial experience, upon very poor reasoning, and upon your own weakness. Give it up. The world we have been thinking of for so long, the world to which we have been clinging so long, is a false world of our own creation. This is the best definition of mithya. It doesn't mean that it's imaginary. It means that we've superimposed all sorts of false ideas on this world that make it very tempting and appealing to us, and at the same time make it hollow and empty to us. Yeah, and it's our fault. The world has nothing to say about any of this. This is just Kuna.
But that lands me in double conflict with him. Because people in Bidar or people in things we pray for, we put false values. But I am looking at the tree, neither action nor distraction. Where did I put the false?
We have all different degrees of things. Those things that we really tempt us, then we superimpose tremendous value to them. Other things they may not interest us at all. So it's not that we do exactly the same with everything. This process of superimposition is different for all types of things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like wearing a dress. You know, to cover every part of the skin. Wear a dress. The dress makes a difference.
So give up the world which you have conjectured, because your conjecture was based upon a very partial experience, upon very poor reasoning, and upon your own weakness. Give it up. The world we have been thinking of for so long, the world to which we have been clinging so long, is a false world of our own creation, not a projection out of our mind. The world is there, but we have so many opinions about everything. This is beautiful, this is ugly, this food is horrible, who cooked this, all of that. This is our own interpretation that we say there's something objective that it belongs to. It's us. Give that up. Open your eyes and see that it's as such, it never existed. It was a dream, Maya. What existed was the Lord himself. It is he who is in the child, in the wife, and in the husband. It is he who is in the good and in the bad. He is in the sin and in the sinner. He is in life and in death. So if we go back to this beginning idea that everything is divine already, and why do we have to superimpose something on top of it? The answer is really that this Maya is so subtle that to just try to tear off this Maya is something which we're not really capable of doing. And if we follow this idea that we can cover this Maya with something that won't just be covering it, it'll be dissolving it. It'll help to remove it. This is the whole point of this process, that we're taking a very positive and simple and easy way of transcending this Maya. Otherwise, constantly analyzing and everything, it's very difficult. If we infuse everything with this divinity, then this Maya itself will disappear. It'll recede from us. There's some very nice verses. Ramakrishna also says that out of shyness and modesty, it'll become embarrassed once it's recognized for what it is and will leave. This idea. We have this idea with Maya. Yeah, this generally in terms of this ego sense. There's the ego sense that once we recognize the falseness of it, then it disappears. There's a very nice illustration given by Ramana Maharshi. He says the ego is like the uninvited guest at a wedding. There's a party crasher. That there's a wedding reception and a big table of food, and that somebody's there and very obnoxious. He's drinking too much and eating too much and stuffing his pockets, and the family of the bride is on one side, the family of the groom is on the other side. They're looking at each other. Did you invite him? No. Did you invite him? No. And then he sees that he's caught. He sees that he's recognized that he doesn't really belong there, and he makes an exit and leaves. So once we recognize this ego as being a party crasher, then the ego will flee. So Sri Ramakrishna says it's true, but he comes back. This is the problem. He comes back. But how did we get to this idea of this ego? It'll dissolve. And this Maya will flee on its own. Yeah. So that was that whole point. Even there was this wonderful French philosopher Sartre. He gives a very similar example, that this thief goes into the tavern and he's bragging about all of his exploits and how much he took from this place and that place and everything. And then the constable comes in. And as soon as the constable comes in, he goes out the back door and disappears. So once we recognize that this ego is a thief, is the cause of all problems and everything, it'll disappear. Okay, I'll introduce this next topic because there's a technical term for all of this, and this is something which is one of the most important teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. He uses this term, aropkara, aropana. Very similar to adhyasa, adhyaropana. We have different philosophical terms for this. This adhyasa, or aropana, this has a very negative meaning in Vedanta and a very positive meaning in the devotional schools. The negative meaning is that we confuse the qualities of one thing with something else. We have this concept of upadhi. What is an upadhi? Okay, limiting adjunct. Upadhi has a huge range of meanings. And upadhi can just be any characteristic or quality or attribute that belongs to a substance. So everything that we see here will be a combination of substance and attribute. So you'll have this meditation cushion, and the upadhi will be redness. And you can't have one without the other. We can't have a color that doesn't belong to an object, and we can't have an object that doesn't have the color. So upadhi belongs to something. Now, second meaning will be that it doesn't essentially belong to it, but it can be added onto it. So what happens when you get your medical degree? Doctor, that's an upadhi. You get a PhD, you can be called doctor, you can be called professor, all of these things. These are upadhis, these are added on. And now you're the same person you were before that you are afterwards. So it's not essential. The person is the same, doesn't matter. So they're added on to it. Now in Vedanta, we go even further. That there are certain qualities that belong to something else that we confuse and think that they belong to the first thing, not the second thing. One of the classic examples is if we have a vase, clear vase, and we put a red rose behind it. Then we don't know the red rose is there, but we see the vase, and we say that it's a red vase, that redness belongs to the vase itself. Because it pervades it. It seems that it looks exactly like a red vase. We remove the rose, and then the redness leaves also. Then we know that redness never belonged to the vase, it was colorless. So this is what we do with the self within. The upadhis of the self are body, mind, intellect, senses, even subconscious, or all of these things, in addition to which will be our personality and our profession, occupation. All of these things are added on to us. So if we ask who is that person, then that person has a name, that person is a son or daughter of somebody. They'll have all different ways of identifying them and qualifying them. And none of them are essential to that person. One day the person is a teacher, next day the person is retired. What happened to the teacher part? No, Mangesh.
Is this what you will talk about?
Yes. Yeah. So this is one way of analyzing that what is essential. If it can be removed, then it was not essential. If it didn't belong there in the first place, or it was added on, then it's not essential. So this is how, when I talk about myself, that what is the real nature of this I, then normally we have some identification with this physical body. Now we have different ways of utilizing this. It's called vichara. There's analyzing that if it's something that I can be aware of, then it's something separate from me. So if I can observe my body, I'm not the body. Or something that I possess. If it's my possession, then I'm something separate from that. So because I'm the witness. If I can witness this body, then I'm separate from this body, and this body is changing. This body that I had as a child has nothing in common with this physical body now. That no cells are in common, nothing is in common. Of course, some DNA and other things. It's not like it's somebody else's body, but anyhow, we analyze that way. Mind. My mind is constantly changing. My ideas are changing. I identify one time as it's a Democrat, next time as a Republican. but it's the same I. I used to be that, now I'm this, the same I. So it's something separate, even beyond even the mind, in a sense. So this is how we analyze, and these are all superimpositions. Now, what Sri Ramakrishna says is this sense of ego. This is the main problem. This sense of I is also observable. I am not that. What do we mean by ego? The ego means what I think that I am. Is my sense of identification. How I identify myself. That's my ego, and I observe that, and it's changeable, and I'm something other than that. So we can analyze. He says analyze 1,000 times, and you'll see that each time you analyze, you'll see this ego is I'm something other than that. That it's false. There's no substance to it, but each time it'll come back. So what do we do with that ego? We superimpose something on top of it. So this is this idea of everything to be covered with God doesn't mean just this external universe. It means with the self within. So how do I go about getting rid of this false identification with this physical body and mind and everything? Then I superimpose some other type of identification. This is what Ramakrishna calls establishing a relationship. And he uses this two concepts. One is this idea of bhava, that we have a certain understanding, we worship God in a particular way. And then this other idea of aropa, that we identify with the ideal worshiper in that particular tradition. The best example we have is when Sri Ramakrishna wanted to worship Rama, that he had to have that bhava that I'm a servant of God, the Dasya bhava. And in order to do that, he had to identify himself with Hanuman, because if we can feel one with the ideal worshiper, then we know how to worship. So the devotional tradition based on this idea of bhavas is that it's more important to fix the mind on the ideal worshiper than on the object of worship. So for Sri Ramakrishna, he had to become Hanuman. He had to become Sita to worship Rama that way. He had to become Radha to worship Krishna. Had to become Yashoda in order to worship the baby Gopala. Then it becomes easy in order to establish that type of relationship. So he would say, Arop Kora. So adopt a particular spiritual attitude. And this is all another way of covering this ego sense with something that, is it true? Yeah, it's true, but we're using our imagination also. It's not literally true that I'm a monkey jumping from the branch to branch, but it's true that I can have that relationship with God that is based on this idea that I want to look upon God as the master, and myself as taking my only joy in life is to serve the master. This isn't a boss who's bossing over us. This is someone that we love dearly. And the greatest joy of my life is to serve that way. What does this do? It kills that selfish ego. Yeah? So this is that covering that will dissolve that Maya. If I think of myself as a child of the Divine Mother, automatically my understanding of myself as a child of my biological parents is put to the side. Not that I'm renouncing them or anything, but my sense of identification has changed. Right? This is also part of this covering everything with God. So this Arop Kora, this is a great theme here. Utilizing this idea is not just this yatkinchit, everything with this visible world, but covering the self, that this false idea of this ego, that we cover that with one of these paradigms that we have. We feel we're the ideal servant of God, ideal child of God, lover of God. God is the beloved. So we have to identify with Radha, or one of the ideal relationships that we see in the Puranas and other and other scriptures. So we'll continue. We'll follow this theme. We'll finish tomorrow. And there'll be a lot of time for discussion and questions. Any quick last minute questions? Otherwise, we may have. Okay. So this one line, everything is to be covered by God, is so meaningful. So many different ways of understanding it, and all based on this idea that the use of the imagination is something terribly important in spiritual life, and there's nothing false about it. The Swami Atmajnanananda, he used to say, today's imagination is tomorrow's realization.
Well,
Yeah, yeah. So we utilize this faculty of the mind to picture things, to imagine what it would be like if we were God-realized souls. Huh? This is even something as simple as this Stita Prajna section from the chapter 2 of Gita, that we try to do the same, Arupara. That let me try to feel what it would be like to be such a sage of steady wisdom, that nothing can trouble me, nothing can bother me, that I'll remain in this peaceful mood all of the time. Let me superimpose that. Let me try to pretend that I am that person so that I become that person. So this is the technique that we find here. Hmm.
Talking about this saying, I love you, the husband of the wife, wife. So that is one. Then this one. Like again.
Mhm.
And then if you say the outside, I do not know where, but yeah. So, like what you said, is that the person who brings the world that is not denied that inside is God, why? They have different expressions, different times, different issues. Why do they have multiple ways of saying? Because Ramakrishna is explaining to the Bhakti. They don't they see what they see.
There's an evolutionary process that takes place even with regard to spiritual ideas. Swamiji says that these spiritual teachings are universal, but they come in, they're discovered at different times, just like the law of gravity was operative before the apple fell on Newton's head, right? It was still working. So the Upanishadic period was mostly this period of Jnana Yoga. We will find lots of things that aren't found there, that are found in there's no concept of the avatar. There's no bhakti yoga. There's so many things that really get developed later that we find in Gita and everything that show how our understanding of the variety of spiritual experiences and different ways of looking at things, how they keep growing. Swamiji says there may be many new spiritual ideas that will be discovered in the future. Even things like reincarnation, that we may find newer and subtler ways of understanding there's a different process and things like that. So there's a distinction between what we can say are the universal eternal truths and how they manifest themselves historically through these great thinkers and the different traditions and different religions and everything.
Everything that they are,
Mhm.
we didn't know, that didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Didn't mean it. And systems that you have to know.
Mhm.
So similarly,
Hmm.
there may be
Many new things to be discovered in the future. Yeah. And he said we all have to become prophets and discover these new things ourselves.